Now, what ecologists try to do is to determine what are the conditions and principles that allow life to survive and flourish on the planet. Not a bad set of information to know. Now, I would have thought any group in society, before they start a new program or new business or whatever, would say, wait a minute now, what was it those ecologists tell us are the principles and conditions? Because whatever we do, we better not violate those principles and conditions, because that's what keeps us alive and healthy. But what we have done is that we have elevated economics above ecology. In my country, we have a guy that loves George Bush, and when we say, well, we've got to do something about global warming, his answer has been, we can't do anything about that, it'll destroy the economy. So I actually had a minister of the environment in Alberta, which is comparable to your state of Texas. The Alberta environment minister said to me, listen, Suzuki, you guys better understand that we can't afford to protect the environment if we don't have a strong growing economy. So we've elevated the economy above ecology. So the big challenge is to put the eco back into economics. Remember the eco part of that whole thing. And the problem we face today is the economy is fundamentally flawed and is inevitably driving us to destroy the biosphere. And let me say first, we're not going to destroy the Earth. The Earth is happy with or without us. The Earth is going to do fine. But the biosphere is the area of air, water, and land where all life exists, and we are altering that in a fundamental way. Now, the fundamental problem with the economy, two things I'd like to point out that we've got to fix. Nature in the oceans, on land, nature performs services. Services that an animal like us depend on for our very survival. Let me illustrate it. Back in the 1980s, the Lytton Indian band called me and said, look, our sacred valley, the Stein Valley, has been given over by the BC government, gave a license to a multinational forest company to log it. Fletcher Challenge from New Zealand is going to go in and log it. Would you help us protect this valley from logging? We don't want any industrial activity in there. So I said, okay, I'll try to help you. And the first thing I did was take my family, and we went camping in the valley. I wanted to see what it was that they treasured, and it's a magnificent valley of virgin forest and all that. So after 5 days of camping, we were hiking out, and we ran into a party coming up along the trail. And I knew that these weren't ordinary campers. They had suits and ties on. So I very quickly, we meet and chat, and I realized this is no ordinary guy. This is the CEO of Fletcher Challenge, the company's going to log it. And he quickly realized, oh my God, who's that shit disturber David Suzuki? So very quickly, we got into conversation that escalated very quickly into a shouting match. And finally, in frustration, he said, listen, Suzuki, are tree huggers like you willing to pay to protect those trees? Because if you don't pay for those trees, they don't have any value until someone cuts them down. And for me, that was an epiphany. I went, oh my God, he's absolutely right. You see, as long as that forest is healthy and standing, all of the green things in it are taking carbon dioxide, putting oxygen back into the air. Not a bad service for an animal like us. Indeed, we wouldn't be alive if all the green things in the world weren't doing that. But the economists, that's called an externality. It's not in the economic equation. That's why you can dump stuff into the air without paying the cost of what you're doing to the atmosphere. It's an externality. Those trees, the roots hold the soil, so when it rains, the soil doesn't run into the spawning gravels of the salmon. That's an externality. Those trees are pumping millions of gallons of water out of the soil, transpiring it into the atmosphere and moderating weather and climate. Externality. The forest provides habitat for fungi, insects, birds, mammals, amphibians. That's an externality. So all those things that standing forest is doing for us to make the planet habitable and useful, all those things are economically irrelevant. That's why a lot of people say conventional economics is a form of brain damage. It is. How can you live on the earth and act as if nature's services are irrelevant to the economic system? Now there are scientists, or there are economists called ecological economists, that are trying to internalize a lot of nature's costs. That is, they say, what would it cost us if we didn't have these services and we had to do it ourselves? Well, a lot of things that we would never be able to do. For example, the most frightening report I read in many years was when I heard about colony collapse disorder, when honeybees in the United States suddenly began to die out. Frightening, terrifying, because if we don't have pollination, we don't survive. It's as simple as that. Terrestrial ecosystems around the world will collapse. So this is, and we could never replace pollination. We may think we're clever. We will never be able to do what pollinators do for us as a service. But some things we can estimate. How much would it cost to filter the water? I mean, I'm sure your filtration bill here must be huge for your water. The solution is not to buy bottled water. Don't drink bottled water. It's double there are a number of services that we can estimate what it would cost us to do it. Bob Costanza at the University of Vermont did this many years ago and came up with a very crude estimate that of about $33 trillion a year would cost us if we had to do what nature does for nothing. When he published his paper, the annual GDPs of every country on the planet came to $18 trillion. So nature is doing twice as much service for us if we had to do what nature is doing. And that's considered an externality in our economic system. If that isn't brain damage, I don't know what the heck is. Now, so that's, we've got to internalize these costs. And I'm sorry, we're going to have to pay a hell of a lot more for a lot of things, including dumping carbon into the atmosphere. But there's another problem that we face. That is, if you listen to economists, they say the economy can grow forever. Well, wait a minute. We live in the biosphere. The biosphere is fixed. It can't grow. As Carl Sagan used to point out, if you shrank the Earth to the size of a basketball, the biosphere would be thinner than a layer of varnish on that basketball. And that's it. It can't grow. How can anything within that finite world, how can anything think it can grow forever? I mean, our bodies are made up on average of about 100 trillion cells. One cancer cell out of 100 trillion is nothing. And that old cancer cell thinks, oh, I can divide and, keep dividing and dividing. Long before it's a really significant size, it'll kill you. Because nothing can grow in a finite world forever. But economists think the economy can grow forever, which it cannot. But they actually believe it must grow forever, because the very definition of progress is by whether the economy grew this year or not. But if growth is just a means to an end. What is an economy for? I mean, just to grow. What the hell does that mean? It's just a means to something else. Are we better off? Are we happier? Is there a limit? How much is enough? I'm telling you, one of the problems I have with our house is people keep giving me stuff. We got stuff coming out of every pore. We've got too much stuff, and yet nobody ever says, gee, wouldn't life be a lot better without all this stuff? We just got to grow forever. Now, I'm going to show you why. First of all, this is an empty goal to think just growth is a be-all and end-all. But I'm going to show you why it's suicidal. Anything growing steadily over time, whether it's the amount of unemployment, whether it's the size of your city, the number of people, the amount of garbage you make, anything growing steadily over time is called exponential growth. And anything growing exponentially has a predictable doubling time, okay? So if it's growing at 1% a year, it'll double in 70 years. 2% a year in 35 years. 3% is double in 24 years. 4% in 17 and a half years. Anything growing exponentially has a predictable doubling time. I'm going to give you a system analogous to the planet. I'm going to give you a test tube. That's Earth. And filled with food for bacteria. And I'm going to put one bacterial cell in, and it's going to divide every minute. That's exponential growth. So at time 0, at the beginning, there's one bacteria. In 1 minute, there are 2. 2 minutes, there are 4. 3 minutes, there are 8. 4 minutes, 16. That's exponential growth. And at 60 minutes, the test tube is completely packed with bacteria, and there's no food left. Okay? So it's a 60-minute growth cycle. When is the test tube half full? Well, the answer, of course, is 59 minutes. Been around for 59 minutes of a 60-minute cycle, it's only half full. 1 minute later, it's full, right? So at 58 minutes, it's 25% full. At 57 minutes, it's 12.5% full. At 55 minutes of a 60-minute cycle,